What's going on, everybody? It is the one and only Q from Retro Q Gaming, back in effect as always. And I want to thank everyone for bearing with me for this whole week. I have been away, there hasn't been much going on here. And I'm finally back, and I'm going to do that by coming up with the next episode of the Quack Experimental Podcast. I believe we're on number 5 at this point. Now, it's late, I'm a mess, but I decided, you know what? I haven't done shit all week, so I want to get it all together. I've spent all day since I got back combing the entire week's worth of stuff about what I do and don't want to talk about. Now, because I didn't do any videos this week, this one will probably be a bit longer than usual. But anyway, we'll get going because I got some good stuff on here that I want to talk about. Both positive, negative, and, well, depending on what camp you sit in, it could be good, could be bad. So we'll start off. Unfortunately, there's no wholesome start to this week's one, but we'll go with everyone's favorite shit show and everyone's favorite dumpster fire. You might know it as Anthem. Now, this is a mess. Okay, we all know Anthem launched. It was an absolute shit show. It was a complete disaster, and nothing has fixed it since, basically. And the devs, BioWare, have put out there in some sort of roadmap that they're going to be adding basic functionality, basic features, actual content of gameplay. Essentially, they're going to put the game into a launch day state months, if not years from now. However, there's been a little bit of a wrench thrown in those plans because all the promised progression and promised roadmap and promised changes have all been kind of scrapped. Not so much scrapped, but they've basically been delayed permanently or indefinitely because the roadmap is now completely off. It's all delayed until further notice because it's just an absolute disaster. Now, this gets arguably worse when you take into consideration the state of the entire thing. Because when you look at all the stories, all the insider stuff and all that's coming out in relation to Anthem, apparently it's just been disaster after disaster after disaster after disaster. It felt like all different parts of the team were developing different aspects of the mechanics of the game that weren't talking to other areas and sections of the team. They were developing it like it was going to be game genre A, and the different team was developing it like it was going to be game genre B, and it just felt like an absolute disaster. And it looked that it came together. It's a big, came together at the last second. Pretty much from what we understand is when EA just said, okay, this is the release date, it's coming out, fix it, make it happen. That's what it seems to be the situation in that case. The game clearly has not come together and has not, whatever you want to call it, it just sounds like an absolute mess. And to be honest, with BioWare's track record the last maybe 5, 6, possibly even 8 years, it's been a while, I don't remember exact times and dates on certain things. If this doesn't come back properly, BioWare as we know it might be done. I've said this before. Look at BioWare's track record. Now, I'll probably leave one or two things out here, and I don't remember the exact timeline, but you had Mass Effect 3, you'd Mass Effect Andromeda, you'd Star Wars Titanic, there was Dragon Age Inquisition, I don't really know how that one went, and now this. There's probably something else in there that I'm forgetting, but now this. This is probably their biggest, highest profile disaster as well. At least since Mass Effect 3. Don't know which one is bigger and which one counts more as a slight, but it's a pretty big shit show in there too. Anyway, moving on, we'll go with some Persona news and announcements. Now, we all know that Persona 5 The Royal was teased last month, and Atlas had said that they were going to show off more details and more info and whatnot at the live action concerts, the music concerts that were taking place over the last couple of days in Japan. And we did, in fact, get some new Persona 5 Royal. Or it's weird, depending on where you look at. I've seen official images for both. So some places call it Persona 5 Royal, and some places call it Persona 5 The Royal. Now, I have a funny feeling it's a regional thing. I have just an assumption and a guess that it's Persona 5 The Royal in everywhere else, and Persona 5 Royal in Japan. I could be wrong, but we'll see how it goes. Anyway, back to the more important part. We have seen a little bit more about it. We've gotten a little bit of details about it. which I'll go into real quick here. So for Persona 5 The Royal, as you'd expect with Persona 5, it's basically an enhanced version of Persona 5. Think Persona 3 FES or Persona 4 Golden. It's basically Persona 5's version of that. It's going to come with many different things. It's coming with the new featured female character called Kasumi. She's going to be a new playable addition to the party. She is not the new main, what do they call her, female protagonist like you have in, say, Persona 3 FES. Oh no, Persona 3 Portable. She's not a female protagonist that replaces your main character, but she joins with them. Her relationship to them is it's not 100% defined and 100% shown just yet. I'm sure they're not going to give off all the details because they want to leave it to everyone to figure out in game and to be part of the story. There's also a couple of other good ones in there too. For example, there's a new third semester in the in-game story, because we all know Persona games, they run with the school semesters and whatnot. The new one takes place from January to March, which is something that's pretty much skipped in the base game. So it's probably going to be a decent chunk of content, because I know any of you out there who've played the Persona games, specifically Persona 5, you know how long 3 months of in-game Persona timeline is, and that's going to be some pretty good stuff anywhere. As it is expected, as already announced, it is a PS4 exclusive, and they have said that there will be PS4 Pro support. Now, as far as PS4 Pro support, I am not expecting 60 frames per second. To be completely honest, because it's a turn-based game, it doesn't require 60 FPS. It's not an action-based game, it is a turn-based game. I've always said that turn-based games, they can get away with 30 frames per second. 60 would look better, of course, but it's not a huge deal breaker. It doesn't affect the gameplay like it does in almost every other single game. Don't care what anyone says. However, I think the PS4 Pro support in this case will be a resolution boost, which will be great within itself, because Persona 5 and everything about it is some of the most stylish shit you've ever seen. Hell, you can't see it right now, but my background, my desktop wallpaper right now is Persona 5. It says it all. So it's just absolute style incarnate. And to have that running natively at 4K, and I'm sure they'll redo all the menus, they'll redraw everything and all that, or at least they already have the higher quality assets available in the menus and whatnot. Hell, they probably even have the game ones there. And to actually put them in it at native 4K, that would look absolutely gorgeous, absolutely glorious, and I can't wait to see it in that regard. It is coming out this year in Japan. It's coming out in October, I believe it is, in 2019. However, in Asia and the rest of the West, we are going to rest of the West, in Asia and the West, I guess you could call it, we are going to have to wait till 2020 to get our hands on Persona 5 The Royal. I know I'm buying it day one. Absolutely love Persona 5 so much. It's one of the greatest games I've ever played, one of the greatest JRPGs I've ever played. I will gladly buy that game again. I'm not going to be able to sink my teeth into it straight away, because first off, that game, the base game, took me over 100 hours to complete. So it will require like a set time to get back into it. I'll probably do it in like a little bit of a lull period whenever it comes out. But anyway, that's it. Now, my favorite topic of the video. I'm tipping my hand here. My favorite topic in this entire video. We're sticking with Persona 5 to an extent for this one. And we're going with Persona 5S. That's right, boys. But we're not talking about Persona 5 Switch, because there is no Persona 5 Switch. But you know what there is? That starts with an S and is a Persona 5 link on the Switch. Persona 5 Scramble. That's right, Persona 5 Scramble. The absolute pinnacle of trolling, the absolute pinnacle of salt, and the absolute pinnacle of butthurt. Persona 5 Scramble, what is it? To give you the quick variant of it before I launch into where I want to talk about it and what I do want to talk about it. It's a Musou game. Persona 5 Scramble, or Persona 5 The Scramble, whatever you want to call it, is coming to PS4 and Nintendo Switch. It is a Dynasty Warriors style game, like a Musou game as they call it. It's along the lines of any of the Dynasty Warriors games or Hyrule Warriors if you are unfortunate enough to play it on Switch. What's the other one? Fire Emblem Warriors is also on there too. Again, they all have low quality graphics and assets and performance issues. So naturally, if you're going to play this, play it on PS4. Specifically PS4 Pro if you want to have any hopes of maintaining your frame rate. Now, that's the main part I wanted to get out of the way because I have a lot to say about Persona 5 Scramble. And we don't even need the details on it. But I do want to say that you port begging little bitch ass motherfucking Switch owners, this is more than you deserve. And this is the ultimate troll. There's so much salt, so much butthurt, so much absolutely everything because of fake, unfounded, unsubstantiated claims other than, oh, why would they not bring it to Nintendo Switch? Well, guess what? Persona 5 is not on Nintendo Switch. There is no port of Persona 5 on the Nintendo Switch. It is staying on a PS3 and a PS4. And you can't call me a Sony fanboy because I am not a Sony fanboy. That is the absolute beautifulness of this situation. Absolutely beautiful. It is the absolute pinnacle and perfection of port begging. It was done so well. Atlus completely fucking killed you all. Atlus have previously said in the past, Persona 5 will not be coming to Nintendo Switch. Everyone completely disregards that. But they just love to say, oh my god, Persona 5S, oh, Switch port confirmed this, that, and the other. And then you get absolutely royally, get it? Persona 5 royally fucked with your scramble. You got your asses scrambled, your brain scrambled, everything scrambled. And it is so fucking good for me to see that happen. I have not seen butthurt on this scale in about, what are we on now? It's I'm trying to picture a timeline in my head. I haven't seen epic butthurt on this scale since E3 2017, all the way up until about August of 2018. And the reason for that is the last time I saw this immense level of Nintendo Switch fanboy salty butthurt was Monster Hunter World. And that permeated for several months, arguably over a year, from its initial announcement at E3 2017 until post-PC release in August of 2018. So between all the stuff that happened on the Xbox One version, the PS4 version, and of course the PC version, I haven't seen that much butthurt since then. I could go to any Nintendo website, any Nintendo forums, any Nintendo comment section, any Nintendo anything, and I would see Monster Hunter World, that's right, they had World articles on Nintendo websites, Nintendo exclusive websites. There was that much devastation and butthurt about it. And all of those would have 100, 150, 180, 200, 210, something like that, comments in every single one of them. Persona 5 Scramble has scrambled your record, if you will, because you can go onto any single one of these websites and the smallest one you will find within the first 24 hours is about 260. Most of them over 300. And it's absolutely amazing. Remember when I said that Persona 5 Scramble, that even if Persona 5 ever does get ported to the Switch, even though you don't deserve it, being, you need to be taught a lesson, essentially. This is your lesson. Get fucked. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm going to enjoy Shin Megami Tensei 5 exclusively on Nintendo Switch. Hopefully it's a good game, at least, anyway. But you suffered a rat of being an afterthought. Look at this as your perfect example. How hyped was everyone about this, despite it not actually being real, and there being no tangible evidence, and it never turned out to be real. This is what happens when you are the outlier, when you are completely different, and you are obsolete in this regard. You can have your own thing, you can be your own thing. When you don't get what you feel you're entitled to, don't be surprised When there's the mainstream and there's you, these two things don't overlap. You don't deserve it, you don't get it. And I get to laugh because remember what I said all this time. If it does come, I get to laugh because you're a poor begging afterthought. If it doesn't come, I get to laugh because you're a poor begging afterthought that just gets completely exposed for your irrelevance. So, what more is there to say other than ha, 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 ha. That's it. Now, moving along. As much as it kills me to move along, I do have to move along to another topic. Sony have come out and said that there will be no PS5 before April 2020. This obviously makes perfect sense because they've already said that they're not going to launch it this year. The PS4 is already approaching its 100 million mark. It's currently at 96.8 million units sold. And of course, it makes no sense that they would tip their hand this early, especially if it's not going to come out until late next year at the earliest. And really what they want to do is they want to hold off all the now, in my opinion at least anyway, what they want to do is hold off all the new announcements and the new hype and all for the fiscal year starting next year, because we all know that the fiscal year will start or will end at the end of March 2020 and a new one will start in April 1st of 2020. So you could have, hell, they could have an announcement on April 2nd, because they're not going to want to announce it on April 1st because no one will believe it. But if they announce it on April 2nd, they'll say, yeah, coming out October, November 2020. Shit'll be off the chain. And honestly, I think it's going to come out in Christmas of 2020. Might get delayed or something, but Christmas 2020 is probably a realistic expectation if you ask me. We'll see how it goes. Sony are obviously going to hit 100 million units before that. Some people say that, oh, it's on pace to beat out the what is it called, the PS2. I don't think that's going to happen because the PS2 hit, what was like 150 million or in around that. I don't think so. 150 million with their new console this close. No, I don't think so. When the PS5 hits, people are stopped going to buy or completely slow down PS4s. It's not going to have the extra longevity, especially because we do know that the PS5 will be backwards compatible with PS4 games. So why would someone buy, let's just say 2021 rolls around, why would someone buy a PS4 when they can buy a PS5 and play all their PS4 games as well as PS5 games? See what I mean? It just doesn't make sense to me in that regard. So we'll see how it goes. I'm predicting some point in 2020, the end of 2020, probably September, October, November for the PS5. Now, moving back again real quick, I want to bring up Persona 5 Scramble again, just to rub it in your fucking face. Take that, Switch primary owners, you irrelevant fucks. Ha! Okay, moving along, we've got Days Gone, or as I have it listed here, Days Gone Goes Wrong. Or you could even say Days Gone Wrong. Damn, that would have been a better one. So Days Gone is the latest PS4 exclusive. It's arguably the only PS4 exclusive that we know they still have currently or impending. I say that because we all know The Last of Us Part 2 is coming out possibly this year, hopefully this year. There's, Ghost of Tsushima and Death Stranding. I was going to call it Days Stranding. Death Stranding. Those are the big games. They currently have no release dates. They don't even have a release year. Hopefully, again, that Last of Us Part 2 does release this year. But they have no release year. Medieval is not a top-tier AAA game. It does come out at some point in 2019, or at least it's announced to come out in 2019. However, as much as I'm looking forward to that, it is not a top-tier AAA game. But Days Gone is somehow billed as a top-tier AAA game. I have no idea why, for several reasons. One, it's never looked up to the quality of that. Maybe it's just because Sony are focusing on exclusive games and they're generally high quality the last couple of years. Or I think it might just be more to fanboys, and their insistence on, oh, exclusive game, and the fact that there's no other properly dated games for 2019 yet as it stands. Now, the big problem with that is when they hype it up so much, it's currently getting mediocre scores at the moment. It's getting stuff in like the 60s and whatnot. Now, it's not super performing. Apparently, people are reviewing it to say it's meh at best, it's a decent game at best, or you have to play it for 20 hours to finally get into it and finally get going. Any game that tells me I have to play such a significant amount of time just to start enjoying myself, well, that's your game design done extremely poorly. It's the same. It's one of the reasons I don't like Nier. I don't want to have to play a game 3 different times. Just if you put it in one large thing and just say, yeah, that's it. Okay. The 2B story was decent. People tell me the 9S story is pretty meh, and that the real proper story is the A2 story, which is the third one. If I have to play a game 3 times to start getting to the decent story, well, you have a game design flaw right there. But anyway, don't want to die, don't want to cough in the mic or anything. But, oh yes, I'm still minorly sick here anyway. But, as far as Days Gone here, this is why I don't understand why everyone was hyping it up. It's never looked great, both visually and whatnot. Originally when they showed it off, it looked like an indie game. And then it did look a bit better. But then in the most recent thing where they showed it off, they pared it back significantly. For obvious reasons why, I'd imagine. But the developer of this game, Ben Studios, they're a handheld developer. They're almost their entire pedigree is PSP and Vita games. Now, granted, from what I understand, some of their Vita games are good, like Uncharted Golden Abyss and all that. But it's still, you're looking at the scope of your game. Let's look at other games and other studios that have made that have basically had this transition forced on them from coming from mobile and handheld games to console games. You have Ready at Dawn, who made exclusive, I believe it was exclusively handheld and mobile games. I say PSP and Vita and all as mobile, but you know what I mean. And then they made The Order 1886. And we all know how that went. You have Hajime Tabata from Square Enix, who pretty much only focused exclusively on mobile and PSP games and whatnot. And Final Fantasy Tactics Type 0, or Final Fantasy Type 0, not Tactics Type 0. And then he made Final Fantasy 15, and the game was a disaster. So, I know he wasn't exclusively behind that because Nomura was in it for a while. But you see my point. And now we have Ben Studios. Same deal, they haven't made a console game since the PS2. In 2004 I think it was. And then they make Days Gone. And it turns out mediocre. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad game. They can try and make all these games, you can enjoy it, whatever, if you want. But just people need to temper their expectations. People need to realize what they're doing and what they're getting and who's involved. Not just because, Sony, PS4, first party exclusive, automatically 99 out of 100. People need to realize this stuff. But anyway, moving along for a quick little second, I want to bring up Persona 5 Scramble again, because get fucked, you Nintendo Switch port begging cunt bags. That's all I can say. Now, moving along again, we will stick with the Nintendo Switch in this one for a second, and we'll talk about the VR updates for Nintendo Labo for Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey. Both of which have received free content updates that will allow you to play, depending on the game, different parts or different sections or whatever, in VR. Now, this has been received in multiple different ways, because let's look at them one at a time. Super Mario Odyssey has got the VR update for Nintendo Labo. Now, I should say you get these even if you don't have Labo, but you can technically play them, I guess. It'd just be really awkward. But with Super Mario Odyssey, you get a couple of mini games tailored to VR. It's apparently okay at best because, well, I mean, trying to run anything VR on a Nintendo Switch, there's extremely poor limitations that they have to put in there because of it. And apparently, it does kind of highlight it's a little bit charming in the mini game side of it because it is designed properly with that in mind, but there's still a couple of problems. Now, the big one is Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, because with Breath of the Wild, they didn't do any specific unique mini games or anything like that just to highlight it, just to showcase it. What they did is they just made the entire game playable in VR. However, the controls, the camera, all of that shit is not properly equipped for VR. The game is apparently an absolute mess. The game has inspired massive amounts of motion sickness for people. It's an extremely low resolution, frame rate chugging disaster. And pretty much everyone has been recommended to not touch the not the PSVR, the Nintendo Labo VR version of Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. In fact, I am actually kind of shocked at this next thing I'm about to say, but Nintendo exclusive websites have even said it's a disaster, it's a mess, and have warned against it. That completely blows my mind, because these are websites that will suck off any single little bit of detail or little bit of content in any way, shape, or form from any developer, especially when it's directly from Nintendo themselves. These are people that will defend games running at 107p, 20 frames per second, just to get them on a console that look like N64 games. And yet they will talk against this. This shocks me. But kind of pleasantly surprised that people are speaking out against it. First party, or Nintendo exclusive websites anyway. We all know that other places will laugh at it, as rightfully should. But anyway, that's beside the point. Moving on to our next topic, but sticking with the Nintendo Switch, we'll bring up Persona 5 Scramble yet again. Ha ha. I hope you were significantly butthurt about that announcement, because I hope you were really looking forward to Persona 5 on the Switch, and then you got fucked by it. You got scrambled by it. That's all I can say. But anyway, we'll move on to a non-gaming topic for a second, because Persona, what am I talking about? I'm tired, I've been traveling, I'm a bit of a wreck. Anyway, Avengers Endgame. I don't want to say penultimate, because it's done in a strange way. So the big finale, if you will, to Avengers, or to this, I don't want to call it phase, because it's done really weird with the Avengers stuff and all the Marvel stuff. They have different phases of it, but they still have one overarching story campaign, if you will. So it still kind of significantly ends. Don't worry, by the way, no spoilers. It still kind of basically ends the main first story arc and first story campaign, if you will. Not the phases, but the properly first campaign. But it doesn't at the same time. It still signals the end of everything that they've been working for, from the inception of Iron Man 1 all the way up to this. Now, I'm not saying they planned Iron Man 1 to tie in all the way everything we've seen from them into this. They did eventually, but when they gambled on Iron Man 1, I'm sure this wasn't anywhere near as thought and in depth and planned out as it was. But there's still important things to note regarding this, because while we do have this as the end of the proper story and all, and that too, well, you have to think of it this way. It's the important end, essentially, for all the Marvel films of the last 11 years, starting with Iron Man. And that could be very important, because, let's face it, comic book films were never huge before Iron Man. I don't care what anyone says. If you fuckers try to bring up Spider-Man, there's a reason why shit didn't happen after Spider-Man back then. I'm not talking about the new Spider-Man. I'm talking about, fucking Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Don't get me wrong. The first one, Jesus, it's been so long. I think the first one was good. I don't remember. The second one might have been okay, but the third one's a fucking mess. It was a disaster. But look at it this way, right? I love Iron Man. He's my favorite superhero in the Marvel Universe. What if Iron Man had flopped 11 years ago? Because, like I said, comic book movies were not big. Comic book movies were not super hype and super popular. But Robert Downey Jr. basically perfectly, on his own, solo, lonesome, saved comic book movies and basically propelled them into what they are now. So Robert Downey Jr. did something amazing back then. It's not just Robert Downey Jr. There's other people involved with it too. The directors, producers, the fav, the usual. But imagine if Iron Man had flopped. The Marvel Cinematic Universe as we know it, and comic book films as we know it, just wouldn't be what they are. So that's extremely important in that regard. I will say two extra things about it. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil anything about it. I'm not going to talk about the story or anything like that. The only things I will say is that I've already seen it. It's 3 hours long. I found the first 2 hours to be very dull and boring and just very modern wannabe comedic tripe. A lot of it. But the last hour I thought was fantastic. So I will say that. I'm not going to talk about spoilers or anything, or when it gets good, when it doesn't, whatever. But that's my feelings on it anyway. There is still technically one more film in the end of the first saga, the first era, whatever it is. It's Spider-Man: Far From Home. That is technically the end of the very, very first big proper thing, and the first film in the next series, if you will. Not the next phase, but think of the next overarching far story is Black Widow. She's going to have her own film in 2020, and that's going to be the first one in that. So we'll see how that goes. But moving away from Avengers Endgame, I do want to go back to Mortal Kombat 11, because I actually have a lot to talk about with Mortal Kombat 11 here. Now, there's different aspects of it. So I'm going to start off with how much of a disaster it is on the Nintendo Switch, and how much they had to cut down and how much they had to pare back just to get it running on the outdated piece of hardware, even though it is an Unreal Engine game, which is natively supported by the Nintendo Switch. But anyway, the game is an absolute disaster. In handheld mode, it runs at varying levels of standard definition. That's right, it's down as low as 384p. But in handheld mode, regardless of what, even in its best case scenario, it still runs at some form of standard definition. Now, outside that, it's a disaster. Gameplay wise, it's mostly 60 FPS. It drops as low as 45 FPS during gameplay, excluding, of course, the 30 FPS, say, bone crunching scenes, fatal blows, fatalities, brutalities, friendships, or whatever they are. All of that stuff is locked to 30 frames per second, but in gameplay itself, it does drop down to 45 sometimes, which is a big problem for responsiveness in a one-on-one fighter. Completely unacceptable if you ask me. But hey, you know what's on the Switch, regardless, no matter how poor or how poor the visuals and performance are, the fact that it's on there is an absolute technical marvel and technical genius. Fuck off, is all I'll say. That's all I'll say. It's an absolute laugh. Like I said, standard def in that one. And the media outlets are completely exposed, yet again, because they're praising it for the Switch. I have seen one media outlet out there, I don't remember what one it was, but they've said that, oh, well, you know what, the Switch version is good to play on the go as practice and training, and it's good for pretty much nothing else, which, well, I basically agree with, because, woo lad, that's all I can say. But it gets worse, and this next part isn't Switch exclusive. The problems aren't Switch exclusive that I'm about to mention here. The way that the microtransactions in this game are done, they've specifically said no loot boxes, because they like to what's the word, disavow the L word, which are loot boxes, but they will gladly talk about or gladly include all sorts of microtransactions, but as long as they're not specific loot boxes, if you will. That's the funny thing about it. Now, places have done they've done the math, they've crunched the numbers, and apparently it's $6,440 of purchases if you want to unlock everything. Now, Ed Boon has come out and said, oh, this is such a joke, do your research, blah, blah, blah. I haven't run the numbers myself, but I think what's especially funny in places that have run the numbers and done all that stuff is that they have also said there will be a roughly 3,000 hour grind to unlock everything manually. I think it's funny that when Ed Boon called out the $6,440 research and all as well, he didn't mention a single word about the fact that there's a fucking 3,000 hour grind to unlock everything. But he did specifically focus on the number, the monetary number, but didn't mention anything about the time investment and time grind. However, anyway, I just think that's kind of indicative of the whole situation. There's a terrible or multiple terrible tiers of loot systems in the game. Absolutely sounds like a mess. And there are 4 different types of in-game currency. 4 different types of in-game currency. How much of a mess is that? There are supposedly multiple patches coming to fix all this. Some of it will reduce difficulty and reduce challenge and whatnot in certain, and tuning in certain aspects. That stuff can be earned better, as well as balance patches and whatnot for loot acquisition and currency acquisition and whatnot. And they're going to be just doling out different currencies to multiple people as a thank you. Again, however, 4 different currencies, all for different reasons. Bit of a disaster. There's also been talk about Jax's ending. Apparently, it's a woke SJW ending, as they call it. It reverses racism and the slave trade, basically. I don't understand how that's a problem. Why are people pissed off at that? Do people get pissed off at anything nowadays just because social justice warrior reasons, woke and whatnot? I don't know. I just don't get it. Like I said, I haven't played the game myself. I know from what I understand that he goes back in time and stops racism and not stops racism. Sorry, he stops slavery. Why are people upset about that? It's Jax's ending. Deal with it. I mean, it's weird in a sense because of time travel, but I don't know. But that does let me run on for 1 second to another thing relating to Mortal Kombat, or specifically the studio behind Mortal Kombat, NetherRealm Studios. And apparently, places have been in contact with people who have worked in NetherRealm Studios for multiple different projects at this point, dating as far back as Mortal Kombat 9 or Mortal Kombat 10 or even Mortal Kombat 11, the new one. And they've said that the place is basically a toxic shithole. Specifically, they've listed all the mismanagement and crunch time. Now, we all know crunch time is developer crunch, which is stupidly deemed a necessity by the people in charge because of their own poor mismanagement skills. Now, the big problem here is that people have been working 90 to 100 hours at varying degrees when it comes to crunch time because of poor management. Some of these people will be sitting around for hours with nothing to do, waiting for other people to get them a build of a game that they can test, program, debug, do whatever it is they need to do. All because of mismanagement. And crunch can start 6 months out, even longer sometimes, because mismanagement. It sounds like an absolute joke. The people in charge of all this stuff need to be fired. It's the best way I can look at it. Because usually as well, a lot of the time, the people involved, the people who cause the crunch aren't involved in the crunch. These are managers, executives, directors, things like that. These are the people that would gladly clock out at 4:30 in the afternoon and still expect all their staff to voluntarily and unofficially, of course, stay and run 16-hour days and run 100-hour weeks and shit like that. Now, there's so many problems just intrinsically involved with it, because despite all of this that can officially be mandated as voluntary and whatnot as well, if you don't put in your 60, 70, 80-hour weeks or whatever, if you refuse to work that overtime and those weekends and all that, well, you'll get fired when something goes wrong, because they can point the finger and they can finally blame you and say, well, he didn't do all that stuff. He's gone. He's gone. He is gone. When your part of the project doesn't come in on time or there's a problem or whatever, you're gone because you didn't put in all that time. Even though it's completely voluntary. No. There's official lines and unofficial lines. That's how this shit works. Anyone in the games industry who will tell you all of this kind of stuff. You don't work a weekend. You take a weekend off, despite it being voluntary to work at the weekend. You're first up on the chopping block, if that's the case. Or your contract just doesn't get renewed if it's temporary or a short-term one. Absolute mess. Just sounds like an absolute mess. Now, it gets worse to an extent, because Epic Games who are supposedly the paragons of the gaming industry at the moment. Not sure if that's sarcasm or not, but they have also had the same light shone on them right now, because apparently they've also become a toxic shithole to work for. Specifically, when Fortnite blew up. Because with Fortnite being a live game and whatnot, and wanting to please investors and please the money crunchers and the number crunchers, what they were doing for a while were they weren't rolling stuff out and fixes out every so often. If something was released and not people weren't happy about it, or it was broken, it was fix this now before anyone goes home. And that could take another 10 hours for whatever team at the end of a 10-hour day. I believe now they've done it differently, and that they're working on kind of a schedule now for their patches and all. So if something gets released and broken or whatever, unless it's extremely game breaking, it doesn't get fixed for another week or whatever. So that's understandable as well. But it just goes to show how fucked the industry is, because they will just, like I said, they will completely fuck over all of these people if you fuck up or refuse to do their back-breaking, soul-crushing hours and whatnot. You get fired, or you don't get rehired, or your contract doesn't get renewed, and that's fucked up, and that's wrong. Boom. Hopefully it gets fixed with all the unions that want to unionize and all this stuff. Hopefully that gets taken care of. But moving away from Epic Games for a second, I want to go back just for the moment and laugh at everyone for Persona 5 Scramble and Persona 5 when they were Switch port begging, because it's so glorious to me, and it feels so good. So good. So good. But speaking of, well, RPGs we'll go with, Skies of Arcadia Legends has come up recently again in the news, and the director of the game, Reiko Kodama, has said that she really appreciates that everyone loves her work. First of all, Skies of Arcadia was a great pirate themed and ship themed, sky pirate themed and sky pirate ship themed based RPG, which originally launched on the Dreamcast and then was ported to as a director's cut, a definitive edition on the Nintendo GameCube with Skies of Arcadia Legends. And she considers the GameCube one the definitive edition, the director's cut, if you will. And she has no plans and doesn't think it would be right to ever port it to any modern system, give it a HD remaster, or probably ever give it a sequel, which is very disheartening, because that is one game I would love to see remastered for modern platforms, like throw it on PC or whatever, and I think it would do really well. A lot of people would buy it. It's a very well regarded game, and it's a great game, frankly. I love it. It's a really, really good game. So that is kind of unfortunate for me to hear. Now, is it a 100% definitive statement? Of course not. She's not the be all and end all at the end of it. Sega could come in and say, yeah, we want to do this, and that's it. But that leads us back to Persona 5 Scramble, where everyone who was port begging, everyone who's doing all of that shit, got completely fucking exposed. Feels good, man. Feels good, man. But real quick, I'll touch on it that the Fire Emblem Three Houses Limited Edition has finally gone live for pre-orders in Europe. This was a big thing I was worried about, and the funny thing is it went live while I was on holiday. Especially, I only noticed it while I was in the cinema waiting for Avengers Endgame to start. So, how did that go? Now, luckily I managed to... Amazon had been really weird with shipping stuff to Ireland lately, but luckily, when they did put it up on there for pre-order, it would allow it to ship, so I did get a pre-order for it, thankfully. It comes with an art book, a steel book, a sound selection USB stick, and a Three Houses pin badge set, as well as like a big fancy box. So I think that's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to the game extensively. So that's going to be, happy for me in that regard, at least anyway. But speaking of the Switch, actually, we will laugh one more time, again, as always, at Persona 5 Scramble, who basically destroyed any fanboys out there. So you got completely destroyed with your hopes, your dreams of Persona 5 coming to the Switch. I hope you are justifiably sodium enriched and devastated. And absolutely devastated. Okay, guys, sorry about that real quick. I had some technical issues that hopefully we get sorted out in editing. Now, moving along to what we have next is, we'll just touch on this real quick, but Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on the Nintendo Switch has actually completely outsold the Nintendo Wii U. Now, I don't know why this is any type of news, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Mainly because you might forget that the Nintendo Wii U was one of the worst commercial failures in console gaming in the last 20 years. It's only eclipsed by one other failure in that time period, which is, I mean, when you compare the numbers, it's even barely eclipsed by it, which is the Sega Dreamcast. The Sega Dreamcast sold a small fraction, I believe it was like 1 or 2 million units. Maybe anywhere up to 4. For some reason, the number 9 is stuck in my mind, but I want to say it's over 10 million. But they sold roughly 10 million units, we'll call it, give or take. I'm not going to look that one up right now. And then the Wii U had sold 13.8 million units. Now, that's very, very poor. Nintendo have never sold anything that low, with the exception of the Virtual Boy. But yeah, you see how bad it is. I mean, the Nintendo's next worst selling thing to that is the GameCube. And the GameCube still sold almost twice that. So, yeah. Well, the GameCube sold, I think it was like 21 million or something like that. It might have been even more. No, about 21 million. But you see my point. It's not. No, don't get me wrong. Okay, let me go back a second. A single game selling 13.8 million units is amazing. Even if it's Smash Ultimate, I don't give a shit about it. Granted, it's the only game that actually came out on the... I mean, I'm not surprised why it sold that many, because it's the only big first-party Nintendo game that came out last year. Remake, the third remake or the second remake of the Gen 1 Pokemon doesn't count. But you see my point. I mean, a single game, a single unit selling that many copies is really good. But by a comparison, just because it's outsold the Wii U, the second biggest commercial flop console of the last 20 years, that part isn't impressive. If you ask me, anyway, that part's not impressive. I mean, why stop there? Let's go with Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 has sold like 3 times as many copies as the Wii U. Why are we not talking about that? See? Same period of time, give or take like a month, but it sold like 3 times as many units as Smash. There's logic here, guys. There's why I'm not as impressed by certain things as some people are. But anyway, moving along, we'll go to what we have next. So, an analysis, a gaming and technology analysis, those people who haven't a fucking clue what they're talking about. One of them has predicted that by the end of next year, the end of 2020, that 20 million people will give up PC gaming. I know I'm struggling to say that with a straight face. Will give up PC gaming and move to a television-based gaming platform. Now, what that means is they're specifically talking about anything that is either a console or any type of streaming-based service that you can do directly to a TV or through a little piece of hardware connected to a TV. Like, for example, think of the NVIDIA Shield, that thing that plugs in under your TV. You can stream NVIDIA GeForce Now to that, so that would technically count. Google Stadia, obviously the PlayStation, the Xbox, the Switch, whatever it is. But I think this is laughable. PC gaming has never been stronger. So I just think this is absolutely laughable. Like, these people, analysts in the past have clearly talked about how they just don't know it. They've demonstrated again and again and again and again that their predictions and that their technology and their knowledge on everything involved is just so poor. I think this is just terrible. Now, it says they will give up on PC gaming to go to these ones. Now, what does that mean? Like, are they going to give up on PC as their primary platform, but maybe still use it for some other things? Are they just going to disregard PC gaming completely? This just isn't happening, though. This is just ridiculous, and it's just not happening. Especially when you consider how poor the streaming side of it is. No matter what service you're using, be it PS Now, Google Stadia, or any of those, even the Nintendo Switch stuff, if you live in Japan with the proper infrastructure, still just not viable, and the quality just isn't there. It's not It's just not happening. And consoles, well, who wants to play at 24 frames per second, with lower than lowest quality settings? I don't know. I don't know, especially if you're coming from a PC gamer. If you're coming from PC gaming, no one wants to go down to that. But again, this also leaves open just how wide that statement is. I mean, when you look at it, technically, someone who sits on their computer, reads, I don't know, Facebook or whatever, and plays Farmville on Facebook, is that a PC gamer? Do they fall into the 20 million people that they're talking about with PC gamers? It's like, oh, are they going to move over to a Nintendo Switch? That could be a logical transition. See, it's far too vague. When I think PC gamers, I think someone, I won't say like myself, it would be like someone maybe a notch or two down from myself. I'm very extreme in that regard. But I think people who might be casual PC gamers in the sense that maybe they play a dozen games on here. I don't like to say people who play like one game, like the people who only play World of Warcraft, the people who only play The Sims, the people who only play, I don't know, Team Fortress or whatever it is. Are they going to move over? Do they count as PC gamers, and are they going to leave and go somewhere else? I don't know. Possibly, but I don't know. I just think this is just awful in that regard. But anyway, back to some positive news anyway. We've got Persona 5 Scramble yet again, because fucking lols is all I can say. Absolutely lols to the max, to the extreme. But anyway, we got some fuckery here and some defense forces. This one's not about the Switch, though, don't worry. But we have World War Z. Now, World War Z is the... People have been basically comparing it to Left 4 Dead, Left 4 Dead 3, blah, 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 whatever it is. But anyway, the developer Saber Interactive have pulled some bullshit fuckery because, well, we all know that people like to defend themselves, and despite, bullshit reasons and all too. But anyway, they put out some sales numbers for World War Z. Currently, it stands around 250,000 units sold on PC mark. Now, here's the big problem. Here's the reason why I'm talking about this. We're about to get to right now. So, this game, if you didn't know, is launched currently exclusively on the Epic Game Store. Now, it's going to get juicy here. It's going to get juicy, right? So, they have used the term, Saber Interactive have specifically used the term, we have sold this blah, 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 thanks to Epic Store exclusivity. Now, that specifically implies that they would have sold less and or significantly less if the game wasn't exclusive to Epic Game Store. This is actively praising the Epic Game Store exclusivity deal as the sole reason for more and larger volume of sales. They're specifically actively recommend or referencing that. They say they had predicted previously that they were going to sell about 70,000 units no matter where they put it out. But then suddenly, thanks to Epic Store exclusivity, they have sold 250,000 units. Let me ask you this, Saber Interactive. How does the Epic Store unit sale, Epic Store deal, the exclusivity deal, how did that benefit you? How did that make you sell 4, 5, whatever amounts of extra copies? I'm waiting to hear. I will gladly sit here and hold my breath. Yeah, good fucking luck. See, it's so sad because they're just so damage controlling about it. So let me, how does this deal let them sell 4 times as many units or whatever it is? How do we know that just because this is based on their internal projections now? So how do we know if they hadn't launched on Steam that they wouldn't have sold 500,000, that they wouldn't have sold 1 million, maybe 2 million? So in that case, even though if they'd only predicted 70,000 units, but might have sold 20 times as much, you see my point here? Their wording is specifically bullshit fuckery to me, and it's reeks and screams of damage control. If you ask me, it's insane. It's insane. But anyway, moving along. I'm sick of talking about that little topic at a second, and that is Persona 5 Scramble, because it's completely devastating every single one of you fucking fanboys out there, because you're port begging plebs on an irrelevant modern gaming platform. And you don't get what you don't deserve. Although what you do deserve is ridicule from me. Yes. Yes. But anyway, back to the Epic Game Store stuff and the bullshit fuckery and all again here. We have a game called Phoenix Point. Now, Phoenix Point is developed by I suppose, the creator of XCOM went and founded his own studio again, and he basically wants to make a spiritual successor to XCOM. Not really a spiritual successor since that game is still going, but he wants to make a different version of XCOM, if you will. And that game is called Phoenix Point. Now, this has been kind of weird. So I've talked about it before, that when it came to the likes of Epic Games and the offers that they make developers, and they've always said, oh, well, we make a developer an offer, if they accept it or not is 100% up to them. But I've always theorized that they just make them an offer they can't refuse, one that's so ludicrously high that it's just basically absolute insanity if they don't take it. But don't forget, companies are out to make money, so naturally they're going to take this kind of stuff. And we have numbers in this case. We have specific numbers in the case of Phoenix Point, which proves my point that I said before, that Epic Games makes them an offer they can't refuse. Now, because of what we have here and what we know, an investor has put out there that, like a major stockholder and investor of Phoenix Point, has noted that the Epic Games exclusivity deal paid by Epic Games was $2.25 million. That's $2.25 million to the development studio to get the game exclusively on the Epic Games Store. Now, I don't know 100% if it's just timed exclusivity or if it's permanent or whatever, but the point is they were paid $2.25 million. Now, this ties in to something a little bit before that was mentioned too, that I always found kind of sketchy about. So when it comes to Phoenix Point, when this was originally announced that it would be moving to the Epic Game Store, because this game was crowdfunded first, and obviously the crowdfunding promised Steam and whatnot and all that too. They said that, listen, if you're not happy about the change and the fact that it's moving to Epic Game Store instead of Steam, we will gladly refund your money. But not the guy in charge, but one of the other head producers and all that, the executive producers, whatever his job title was, he actually said, in relation to the Epic Games deal, that even if every single one of the people who crowdfunded the game and pledged to the game, if every single one of them took their money back and got refunded, full refunds, that the Epic Game Store was still more lucrative. So, what we do know as well, also published by investors and public crowdfunding campaigns and whatnot as well, they raised roughly $700,000 using crowdfunding. So, the deal that Epic cut them for exclusivity was over three times as much as their entire crowdfunding campaign. You see what I mean when I say Epic are just making people an offer that they can't refuse? Like, imagine that. Imagine if you made a game and you crowdfunded that game and you raised exactly $1 million and you were going to put that game on Steam. And then Epic Games comes up to you and they say, oh, well, why don't you put your game on our platform and we will give you $5 million for that. You could afford to refund every one of your backers and you would still make $4 million extra over what you would have made initially on that. Think about that. Is that really a choice at the end of the day? I mean, I could offer someone 20 million euro to do whatever they want. I'd say, well, the choice is theirs. Is it really? 20 million is a lot of money. Hell, 5 million is a lot of money. 2.25 million is a lot of money. Imagine what a studio could do with that. Imagine what a CEO of a studio could do with that. See? Now, I think what's really funny as well is, we've covered this before, but almost all developers and publishers will try to damage control their Epic Game Store involvement. We've seen Epic, I suppose technically it's Epic Games and 4A Games and whatnot, when they specifically used convoluted comparisons and not abstract numbers. Let's say Metro Exodus sold, what did I say, 2.5 times more than Metro Last Light on Steam. Now, here's the big thing. Like I mentioned in the previous video about it, Metro Last Light was not a very hyped game. In fact, it was the least hyped of the entire trilogy. PC gaming in 2013, I think it was when that came out, was nowhere near as big. And Metro Exodus is obviously much more higher profile and higher hyped, and the PC gaming market as it stands at the moment. So there's a big difference there. So they specifically use these metrics that don't give you an exact one, but it makes themselves sound better. Some people have given straight numbers as well, like for example World War Z, like 250,000 units sold on Epic Game Store, blah blah blah. But companies will always try to damage control this, and the funny thing is it's almost all companies will damage control this. The developers of Satisfactory, which is a decent looking game, mind you, they moved to Epic Store exclusively. And their sales have been pretty low, and they've been very vocal about it. Now they meme about it on Twitter and all as well. They're talking, we're down to 9 units sold because people got refunds, and the 9 units is obviously a joke. We're clearly up to 15 by now. But the point is, they've been very vocal about selling less than they expected because of the likes of Steam. So now, of course, like I said, selling 9 and 15 units is obviously a joke, but they have been fairly vocal about it, which I think is kind of funny, especially because they probably did get a big stipend as well from Epic about money. Now, we don't know the specifics about their one and their money and all in it too, but you'll see how it goes. But I will say this, right? Mark my fucking words. We're months away from release, and a year away from real proper release, but you can mark my words, no matter how it sells, Borderlands 3 will defend the Epic Game Store till it dies, right? If it sells well, they will go with numbers. If it sells poorly, they will go with obscure, abstract, vague metrics. Guarantee you. They will say something like, it sold 10 times as much as the Borderlands Game of the Year edition. It's like, wait a minute. That was a remaster you gave away to everyone for free. Are you including all the people, the probably millions and millions of people who got free upgrades? Are you counting them as sales? What's the deal here? There will no matter what it is, be it exact numbers if it does sell well, or vague, bullshit, obscure metrics if it doesn't, that they're going to use to kind of obscure the truth. Mark my words. There will be damage control. Randy Pitchford is already fucking balls deep in damage control at this point, so I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Maybe he pulled that one off some cam girl. Who knows? But anyway, we're going to round out real quick. And I suppose you could say one of the main last topics we have here is the Steam sale. There's a Steam Capcom developer sale on at the moment. Now, I don't want to talk about the sale itself, but it's funny because what this did to me when I looked at it today, because I completely forgot there was the sale. I got home, I was looking around through all the stuff, and I was looking through the different franchises and stuff that were on sale. They had Devil May Cry, they had Monster Hunter, I think there was some Resident Evil in there too. And I was scrolling down and I saw Dead Rising, and it completely slipped my mind that there was a Dead Rising 4. Now, I love Dead Rising as a series, but I saw Dead Rising 4 in that list. I'm like, oh my god, there's a Dead Rising 4. I completely forgot about that, because this game is fucking shit. I hated Dead Rising 4, but it just goes to show that I completely forgot it existed, and it just slipped my mind. I have it on Xbox, believe it or not, because it was timed exclusive, and yeah. But yeah, I think it's funny, in my notes here I have Steam Capcom sale, Dead Rising 4, forgot it existed, fuck that game. So yes, fuck that game, I hate it. That game got to the point where I now don't know if I trust them to make a quality Dead Rising 5 if one does happen, because 4 was an absolute joke in every fucking way. But anyway, that's it. We're going to round out just with the final little section, my usual one that I do with what am I playing. Now, I haven't got a chance to play pretty much of anything this week because I was on holiday for almost the entire week, only back, and obviously I'm mainly focusing on this one here. So I've seen Avengers Endgame, like I said, no spoilers, but I was kind of bored and mediocre by the first 2 hours, and the final hour was really good, at least to me anyway. So I'm not going to go super detailed with that. I did see that while I was on holidays. I started Yakuza 0 just before I left. I will be continuing on to more Yakuza 0 because I'm really, really enjoying it. Even if some of the dialogue does last a little bit too long. But, I mean, I'm 3 chapters in. I figured a lot of the tutorials would be over by now, but I guess not. What else we got? Slowly working my way through Batman the Animated Series. Still lots and lots of episodes. Haven't got much progress in it since last time because, well, I just haven't been here. And what else? Oh my god! Of course, Borderlands 2 co-op. That's still going to be resuming with me and the crew, the player haters as we call ourselves. We're going to be running through that. Still some more. We're just about finished Captain Scarlet's Booty DLC. We'll move on to the rest of the DLCs and we finish the game. Hopefully, go through some more of the higher difficulties and all as well. But other than that, I will just round out with one more little bit of news that I almost forgot to talk about, and that is to rub Persona 5 Scramble right in every Switch owner's face yet again, because you do not get your little Persona 5 port on your little piece of shit hardware that I have sitting right back there, because it doesn't deserve it. It's completely irrelevant in that regard, and it really, really, really shows, because there is a PS3 and PS4 game you don't get a port of, even if it is basically a third-party laid port machine and only first-party machine, because, well, that's it. Anyway, as always, I want to thank everyone for watching, for joining me on episode 5 here of the Quack Experimental Podcast. As always, feel free to slide into my DMs, let me know in a comment section, whatever it is, anything you think I might be interested in talking about. I'll take a quick look at it and we'll see if it goes from there. Let me know anything about anything in the comment section. Feel free to hit the like button, the subscribe button, whatever it is, up arrow, down arrow, up arrow, up, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever it is you feel like is appropriate, of course. And we're out. And remember, winners don't play switchboards, and you cannot play a switchboard of Persona 5 because there is none. Boom.